Full-court press on Senate Democrats to help get Mike Pompeo confirmed as the Secretary of State this past week, and the Senate did vote in favor, 57-42. And if you look at the Democrats, and here are some of them from the red states won by the president in 2016, they came out in support of Pompeo. To our political panel with Ben Kissel joining. He's a radio talk show host and political commentator. And Adriana Cohen's with us as well for the Boston Herald, nationally syndicated columnist. Welcome to you both. I think this really gives us an idea of how the midterms are going to shape up, at least on the Senate side. This coupled with the Twitter feud that we reported on earlier this hour between Senator Tester and President Trump. But Adriana, to you first. Is it effective, what the White House seems to be doing here, putting pressure on these red state Dems?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at Jon Tester, that is a state where President Trump won by more than 20 points. And so he is absolutely vulnerable. And so the way he mishandled the nomination of Admiral Ronny Jackson is definitely going to hurt him come November. And so President Trump is absolutely right to put pressure on these vulnerable red state Democrats.
Now, if you're one of them, Ben, say you're Heidi Heitkamp or even Joe Manchin is going to be up in West Virginia. Sure. Donnelly and McCaskill also voted in favor of Pompeo. So it's kind of obvious what's going on here. If the Democrats do want to take, there's so much talk about the House, but if the Democrats do want to take the Senate, they have to first defend these seats, which is very, very difficult, right, in the states that Trump won?
Well, of course, it is an uphill battle. For Claire McCaskill, more moderate Democrats, it has been proven now in the past with the elections of Conor Lamb, of course, Doug Jones in Alabama, that moderate Democrats can win in red states. So I think there is evidence that's pointing in the direction that they're going to be okay. And let's not forget 2010 when the Dems gave up 64 seats, the Republicans won 64 seats. I think the Tea Party wave of 2010 has become the blue wave of 2018.
But with that, just a quick follow with Ben. I get Adriana, I know, will want to weigh on this as well. If you had to bet today, April 28th, on how things go, again, do you say Democrats take the House but have trouble in the Senate, or are you telling us there's confidence on the Democratic side they can take both?
I think there's a lot of confidence on the Democratic side. Just going back to the elections that we've seen so far, Jersey, Virginia, there's just a lot of evidence that this so-called blue wave is real, and it seems to be cresting, and it doesn't necessarily just align with the more far-left fringe of the Democratic Party. Again, going back to a Conor Lamb who ran against Nancy Pelosi.
But again, there are 10 of these. There are 10 of these types of senators that we're talking about, Adriana, today. They're defending seats in states that the president won, and he won handily, right? So what about from the Republican perspective?
That's right. I mean, let's look at fundraising. The RNC continues to out-fundraise its Democrat counterparts by almost 2 to 1. I mean, the Republican Party now has over $42 million cash on hand, and the Democrat Party is $6 million in debt, and that doesn't even include the millions of dollars that Hillary Clinton is charging them for a donor list. Right. That the strong fundraising totals that we've seen for the past year and a half by the Republican Party indicate strong voter enthusiasm for the Trump administration. And look at all that this administration has accomplished, from the tax cuts to a booming economy, low unemployment. There's a lot for this administration to be proud of, and I think that's resonating with fundraising totals.
Ben shaking his head. He wants to get in, and he's going to get in. But I want to bring up a number here, Ben, to have you react to it, because it kind of follows on the point that Adriana is making there, and that's how popular the president is in some of these states. For all the issues his administration might have politically, if you take a look, say, at West Virginia, where they're going to have a Republican primary on the 8th of May and then a general election in the fall, Senator Joe Manchin is up, the Democrat, for re-election. His approval rating in his home state of West Virginia stands in the most recent Fox News poll at 35%. Ben, the president's approval rating in West Virginia is at 87%. What do you say?
Well, if you are a Democrat, breathe a little sigh of relief here, because Donald Trump isn't on the ticket. He's not on the ballot in this election. So will he be able to get enough support because of his name for candidates that he likes? It hasn't been proven in the past. It certainly didn't work for Barack Obama. So I think that, the Democrats, they are in a good place, but they need to work very hard. And when it comes to fundraising, there's a lot of ways to circumvent not having as much money. So social media, good ground game, boots on the ground, knocking on doors and talking to folks. That's what has to be done.
I want to make it clear, because I think the poll was right on the screen, but I think I want to make it clear in the way I characterized it. Those were GOP primary voters that we polled there. Puts it in some context with the 35% for Manchin. I don't want to be misleading there, although he does need some Republicans, obviously, is the point, to vote for him in that state, because it's a Republican state. But as a final point, Adriana, Ben does make a fair point. I saw this when I covered the special election in Pennsylvania. The president's not on the ballot, so as popular as he is, sometimes you have to have the right candidate, right, if you're the Republicans?
You do have to have the right candidate, but if you look at the overall picture, I mean, more Americans are better off today, all Americans, than they were in the previous administration. If you look at the economy, if you look at low unemployment, for Black Americans alone, it's the lowest in history in 17 years, in decades. And so, President Trump is managing our foreign policy very competently. History is being made right before our eyes with North and South Korea brokering peace. So Americans are better off today than they were in the prior administration. And I think that is going to be where voters make their final decision. And the last point I want to make is labor unions support President Trump. Blue-collar workers support the president.
They'll vote
and they're not
Democrat,
going
too.
anywhere anytime
Right,
soon.
in Pennsylvania they did, but we have plenty of time to talk about this between now and November. We'll have to leave it there for today. Ben and Adriana, thanks to you both. I mentioned West Virginia, and speaking of that,